Before PTSD had a name, soldiers lived through it in silence. They called it shell shock. It was the terrifying diagnosis given to soldiers in the trenches during World War I. It's a new and terrible condition that had no known cause and no cure. Imagine being in the trenches, the air filled with the sounds of roaring artillery, the fear of imminent death hanging over you and your comrades. Then, when it's over, the explosions and the screams replaced by an unsettling silence. That's when the real horror began. For some soldiers, the psychological wounds of war were just as brutal as the physical ones. They started having tremors, nightmares, and flashbacks to the horrors they had witnessed. Some became emotionally numb, unable to connect with the world around them. Others simply broke down. Instead of getting the help they needed, they were often labeled cowards or weaklings by military doctors who didn't understand what they were dealing with. What you're hearing here is a recording of real voices from the past. This is a diary entry from a British soldier named Harry Patch, who fought in the Battle of Passchendaele. He was one of the lucky ones. He survived the war and lived to be 97, writing his memoirs in the 1990s. Here he describes the conditions that led to what we today call PTSD. It was a time when men went completely crazy, he wrote, or rather their nerves broke. They'd often come back from a patrol or an attack, sit down in the dugout and start to shake all over. Then they'd have a fit, and after that they'd be better. Or they wouldn't speak a word for days or weeks. Sometimes they'd talk too much, and that was bad. You couldn't get a word in edgeways. They called it excitement, but it was really nerves. I saw many men go that way, poor devils. Sometimes a man would get so bad he'd have to be sent home. The medical staff would say he wasn't fit to be in the army, but they never knew when they got well again. And this is a letter to his wife from another British soldier named Frank Richards. He was killed in action 3 months later at the age of 20. In it, describes the toll the fighting is taking on his mental health. My nerves are fairly strong, he wrote, but I'm getting a bit shaky now. I don't sleep much at night, and the food doesn't agree with me. A little while ago, I was sent out to carry a wounded officer to a place of safety. As I came back, the trench was heavily shelled, and I had to take shelter. My nerves were badly upset at the time, and I've not been quite the same since. It estimated that 10 to 20% of soldiers who served on the front lines during World War I suffered from shell shock. But thanks to the work of doctors and psychiatrists, many of whom risked their own reputations and careers, the condition was eventually recognized and treated. And that understanding has helped countless veterans cope with the invisible wounds of war ever since. These were not weak men, Harry Patch wrote. They were wounded in ways no one could see.